Okay, class, we're about to start section 6.2 proportions. I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about proportions. I know we went over it slightly in 6.1, but we're going to cover it more in depth here. It says, recall, a proportion is a statement that two ratios are equal. For example, 1/2 and 7/14. Section A, using the cross products to determine whether proportions are true or false. Now, what we have here with a proportion, you must have a fraction equal to a fraction. Now, when you have a fraction equal to a fraction, you do cross multiplication. Like we have d times a, or a times d, which will give us a times d. And then we have b times c, which will give us b times c. And these two must equal each other. Okay, now it says if cross products are equal, the proportion is true. If cross products are not equal, the proportion is false. Okay, so now we scroll down here. Okay, examples. Which of the following are true proportions? So we cross multiply. We'll take 4.2 times 8, and we'll set it equal to 6 times 4.8. Now we can multiply this. 8 times 2 is 16. We carry our 1. 8 times 4 is 32 plus 1 is 33. And we have to have one digit behind the decimal. And that equals to 6 times 8 is 48. We carry our 4. 6 times 4 is 24 plus 4 is 28. And we have one digit behind the decimal. So we know that they are not. So this will give us false. Now we go here. We have 6/7 times 5. And that equals to 3 times 10/7. We'll put a 1 under these whole numbers. 6 times 5 is 30. And 7 times 1 is 7. 3 times 10 is 30. And 1 times 7 is 7. They're equal. So it's true. So number 2 is a proportion. Number 1 is not. So now we go down here to section B. Find the unknown numbers and proportions. Now we're going to solve for x. So we do the same procedure. So we'll take 2 times 25, and we have 5 times x. 2 times 25 is 50, which is equal to 5x. Now here's where the difference comes in. We're trying to make both of these equal to each other. Before we had two numbers, and then if they were equal, when they multiplied, they should have equaled each other. But here we're trying to find the unknown that would make this equal to the other side. So here we'll divide each side by 5, and 10 is equal to x. So 10 is the missing number. Now, we do the same thing here. We have 15 times x is equal to 2 times 60. 15 times x is 15x, and 2 times 60 is 120. We divide each side by 15, and x is 8. Now we scroll down here to number 3. So we had negative 0.2 times n is equal to 0.7 times a negative 8. So this will give us negative 0.2 n is equal to 8 times 7 is 56. We carry our 5. 8 times 0, 0 plus 5 is 5. And since this is negative, we know it's going to be negative because a negative times a positive is negative. And we have one digit behind the decimal. So now we divide each side by negative 0.2. And n is equal to a negative divided by negative. We know it's positive. 5.6 divided by 0.2 is 28. Now, we're going to cross multiply number 4. So we would take 7.8 times 2.6 is equal to 13 times n. Now, we could take our calculator and we can multiply 7.8 times 2.6, and that gives us 20.28. And that equals to 13n. We divide each side by 13. We know this side is n, and we could take our calculator. 20.28 divided by 13 gives us 1.56. So our final answer here is 1.56. Now we scroll here to number 5. Now we have 7/9 times n is equal to 8/27 times 1/4. Now 7/9 times n will give us 7/9 n, and is equal to. Now what we could try and do is simplify this a little bit here. So we could take the prime factorization of 8, which is 3 2's. 27 breaks down to 3 3's, and 4 breaks down to 2 2's. So 2 sets of 2's will simplify out, and we would end up with 7/9 n is equal to 2/27. Now, what we have here is this here. We could multiply each side by the reciprocal of 7/9, which is 9/7. These will simplify out and leave you n. Now, we could take the prime factorization of 2 and 9. 2 is 2, and 9 breaks down to 3 and 3. 27 breaks down to 3 3's, and we bring our 7. Now we will have 2 sets of 3's that simplify out, and our final answer would be 2/21. Okay, now we look here at number 6. Now we cross multiply. We have 17 times 4 is equal to x times 9. 17 times 4 is 68, which is equal to 9x. Now we need to divide each side by 9. We know on one side we're going to have x. Now we would take our calculator here. We have to take 68 divided by 9, which gives us 7 point, and you see we have all of these 5's, but it tells us to round to the nearest thousand. So we would go 3 places behind the decimal, so it'd be 7.556. And it's an approximation, so we should use the approximation symbol. And that is it. Okay, now we start on section 6.3, proportions and problem solving. Recall the problem solving process. Now we went over the problem solving process in our previous chapters, but we had step 1, basically you want to define your variables. Step 2, translate the problem into an equation. Step 3, solve the equation. And finally, step 4, interpret the results. Okay, now we have the first example. It says a recipe for chocolate cookies calls for 2 cups of flour and will make about 32 cookies. Jody is making cookies for the PTO spaghetti dinner and expecting to need about 260 cookies. How much flour should she expect to use? So X is equal to flour needed. Okay, now we want to do a proportion. Now, first of all, we add 2 cups of flour that will make 32 cookies. So now what I'm going to do is, this isn't enough space for me. You could keep this on your paper, but what I'm going to do is write this here. It'll be 2 cups, and we know that's flour, over 32 cookies. And that's equal to, now we know we want 260 cookies. And we don't know how many cups of flour we need. Now, if you notice here, what I did was the units. I put units with the same units, cookies with cookies, and cups, and we know this is going to be cups of flour as well. So that's what you're supposed to do with a proportion. You put the same units with the same units. Now we need to set this problem up. Now I'm not going to write the units here until we get to the end of the problem. So we had 2/32 is equal to x over 260. So we'll take 2 times 260 is equal to 32 times x. 2 times 260 is 520, which is equal to 32x. Now we could take our calculator, and we know we're going to divide each side by 32. So that would give us 16.25. So we divide each side by 32. And this will give us 16.25 cups is equal to X. And we know that's cups of flour. So now, when we write our final answer, we would say Jody needs 16.25 cups of flour to make 260 cookies. And this is how you interpret your results. It's a complete sentence. Okay, now we scroll down here to the next problem. It says on the map of Jackson, 1.75 inches is equivalent to 2 miles. How far on the map will correspond to the distance from the Jackson Crossing Mall to JCC, which is 14 miles? So now we have to go down here, define our variable. We want to take X is equal to distance on the map. Distance on map. And we know that that is in inches. So if I recall correctly, let me go back here. I believe it's 1.75 miles. No, 1.75 inches for every 2 miles. Okay. So let's put that in here. So we have, and of course I'm not going to use this, but it's 1.75 inches for every 2 miles. And that's equal to, we know it's 14 miles. And we don't know how many inches on a map that is. Okay, so now we use cross multiplication. But first we need to rewrite the problem. It's equal to X over 14 miles. Now we cross multiply. 1.75 times 14 is equal to 2 times X. Now we take our calculator, 1.75 times 14, that gives us 24.5 is equal to 2X. We divide each side by 2, and that would give us 12.25 inches is equal to X. So we would say on the map, there is 12.25 inches from Jackson Crossing Mall to JCC. And that is your final answer. Now our next example, it says a 16-ounce non-fat caramel macchiato at Starbucks has 220 calories. How many calories are there in the 12-ounce non-fat caramel macchiato? Okay, so our X would be calories in the 12-ounce macchiato. Now we know it's non-fat, but we could just put this here. I just put non-fat. Okay, now what we have here, again, I'm not going to use this because it's not enough space, but for a 16-ounce macchiato, it's 220 calories. So now we have a 12-ounce non-fat macchiato, and we don't know what how many calories there are. So now, we have 16 ounces over 220 calories is equal to 12 ounces over X. So we cross multiply. We have 16 times X is equal to 220 times 12. So it'd be 16X is equal to, so you would take your